And welcome back to the Hot Lap, where we are doing our F1 driver tier list for the United States Grand Prix 2023. If this is a different year you're listening to, normally, to be fair, we do this on a Monday, but it is a Tuesday. Why? Well, all that problem about disqualification, planks, stuff like that. But finally, we can sit down and do our tier list. So, to begin with, this is pretty much, as you can see, I think they're in alphabetical order, pretty much. So, Alexander Albon. How did Alexander Albon do? Well, to be fair, Williams looked really, really slow, I think, at the Grand Prix. I mean, Logan Sargent started last. Yeah, kind of a given for him. Alexander Albon started 18th. Yeah, that was obviously in qualifying. Now, in the sprint grid shootout, sorry, Alexander Albon, he qualified 8th, which is, he was 8th on the sprint grid, which is absolutely insane. A complete overhaul. Now, in the actual sprint, though, he finished 9th, one place out of the points. And I think, basically, I think he got passed by George Russell, didn't he? But in the eventual race results, Mr. Albon did get a point after the many DQs, let's say, and he ended up finishing, excuse my phone there, 9th, getting about 2 points. However, I think that the Williams was not very good this weekend, to be honest. And I would like to give him a B, let's say, because I think he outperformed potentially the car. But there we go. But someone that probably didn't even get a chance to outperform pretty much anything is Fernando Alonso. What the heck, happened to him? He qualified 17th, yeah? They had this brand new upgrade, didn't they? This new floor. Now, for the sprint shootout, he again qualified 12th, which is very un-Fernando Alonso-like. He did obviously out-qualify his teammate, but for the race result, he ended up retiring, finishing, well, not classified really, but 16th on the list. So, I'm going to give him a C, not because he didn't do bad, but he was kind of just like anonymous, really. Having said that, apparently the car during the race, it wasn't too bad. And speaking kind of anonymous, where was Valtteri Bottas? I mean, in qualifying, Valtteri Bottas, he qualified 13th, out-qualified by Zhou, his teammate. But he was kind of, I think, non-existent. I can't even remember anything significant about the Alfa Romeo team. I mean, he ended up finishing, he qualified, it was 18th on the sprint grid. On the sprint itself, Valtteri Bottas ended up finishing 16th. And in the actual race, he ended up 12th, just outside the points, the last of the non-lapped people. Yeah, you're getting a C behind Alonso, mate. On to potentially the driver of the weekend. I say potentially, Max Verstappen. So, how did Max do? Well, he didn't get pole. He messed it up. Not perfect, if I'm honest, for the actual qualifying. But obviously, sprint pole, sprint win. And he did come back from 6th to end up winning the Grand Prix in, I think, one of his toughest wins of the year so far. So, I do think he's getting the special S there, because I think he was one of the drivers of the weekend, to be honest. So, he did the only bad thing about it, other than making those 2 mistakes on his qualifying lap. But I think he made up for that in a way by dealing with what clearly was a break-in issue with one of the best of all time, Lewis Hamilton, driving him down, and the greatest at the moment of this new era of cars, Max Verstappen, in the greatest car. Ended up holding him off, but I don't think it was easy. Didn't really like those radio calls, but maybe we'll save that for another episode. But no, throwing the dummy out the pram there, but I guess it's really intense, isn't it? So S for Max Verstappen. Onto Pierre Gasly. So, Pierre, how did he fare in qualifying? So, as we can see here, he qualified quite well. I think the Alpine's really good. He finished 7th. He qualified 7th in the main part. For the race. In the sprint shootout, he ended up qualifying 10th, so he was certainly up there. In the sprint race, Gasly finished a strong, I think, 7th, which is not too bad at all. And in terms of the actual race result, Gasly finished 6th. So I tell you what, I think for Alpine that was a really, really solid weekend, kind of like best of the rest there, in terms of beating the AlphaTauris, beating the Aston Martins, beating the Williams. He is most certainly getting a B, definitely ahead of Alex Albon. Well done there. Nico Hülkenberg. Now, despite the fact that Haas, they looked okay in practice, and then the actual competitive session started, and it was almost like, what happened to this amazing upgrade? I mean, Hülkenberg, he was out-qualified by his teammate. He qualified 16th. His teammate ended up qualifying, let me see. He qualified 16th. His teammate qualified 14th for the main race. Okay, fair enough. For the sprint shootout, again, it was 17th for Magnussen and 16th for Haas. So not too great now for the sprint. Once again, very average, 15th in the sprint. And in terms of the race result, we are looking at 11th, so just outside the points, bearing in mind the two DQs. So I'm going to give him a middling C. Better than Bottas. To be fair, I think by default, better than Alonso. In a way, because, hey, Alonso didn't even turn up. Oh, no. There you go, let's move Alonso there. Okay, so he's getting that C there. So, next up, Lewis Hamilton. This is an interesting one, okay? Because I think Lewis... absolutely, he did absolutely fantastic. Nearly got pole. I don't, in the Mercedes, which I think on qualifying could have been one of was the slower out of the three cars, I feel. But in race trim, it was probably at least the second fastest car. And it was the one weekend I feel that Lewis Hamilton could have beaten Max Verstappen. Normally, he would be going up there with an S next to Max Verstappen because an absolutely fantastic weekend. Obviously, there's a big but. He got disqualified because of a legal flaw. So by default, he's got to go down the D's. I'm so sorry, Lewis. It's because you were disqualified with a flaw. The reason why that is, the rules were there. Potentially, he could have had an advantage. I don't really think it would have been much of anything, really. I think what really screwed him in the race was Mercedes' strategy, and that was no fault of him. And he still finished 2.2 seconds behind, the best car, essentially, the best car and driver package at the moment in Formula One. But he got disqualified, as did Charles Leclerc, who qualified. He qualified pole in the main race, qualified second. But I still can't help but feel Charles Leclerc, he should have taken the lead in that sprint race, but he didn't. So really, really average-ish there. But he did get that pole, I think. And once again, I can't help but feel that Verstappen did have a really solid car. And he didn't, and he's the one that didn't make a mistake in the main part of qualifying. So normally I'd be up there. He would be getting an A. At the very least, I think Charles Leclerc was a really, really solid weekend. Unfortunately, he's getting a D as well. Slightly less than Hamilton, but they're both DQ'd for the same reason. I'm sorry, Charles. I'm sorry, Ferrari. But Ferrari had an absolutely shocking strategy, didn't they? Not good at all. Next up, we have good old, excuse me, I've got a blocked up nose. Good old K-Mag. So, Mr. Magnussen. Okay, qualified 14th for the main race. Average again, kind of like, yeah, you're better than Hülkenberg, but still. But this sprint, package that Haas had for the underfloors, I'm praying that they just didn't have time to set it up, and it really, really works in Mexico. Kevin Magnussen finishing 17th, 17th behind Hülkenberg in the sprint race. Kevin Magnussen finishing 18th in the sprint race, and in the main race, I mean, it's like hardly non-existent, other than the fact that I think they had a really cool livery. He finished 14th, and a lap down along with Mr. Zhao. So, man, once again, I think you're going there next to your teammate there. A very average weekend, Lando Norris. So, good old Lando. Everyone said that McLaren would not be good around here, and I think it was shown in the hands of Piastri that it really wasn't the case. It wasn't very good at all. But I do think Lando gets a high A. I would have given him an S. Simply because when Max Verstappen passed him, he kind of left the door open, and I still can't help but feel he's fast asleep. And Lando, I can't help, but think he is a bit too nice, kind of like a Jensen Button, Mr. Nice Guy, on the track. And I want to see a bit more aggressiveness. I can't help but feel that had it even been Piastri or Russell or Hamilton or another Verstappen, for example, moving that move on Verstappen, there you go. I cannot help but feel that they would have fought it a lot more, made it a lot more difficult, or at least, tried to make him go around the outside or something, but he kind of left the door open. Yes, it was sort of a dive bomb, but even by the time he saw it, it was too late, and it was like, Lando. So, yeah, that's why he gets the A. Other than that, I think had he fought, I think he extracted the absolute maximum he could have done out of the McLaren car, but a really, really well-deserved A there for Lando Norris. So next up, we have Esteban Ocon. Oh, Esteban. The Alpine, as we mentioned, for his teammate, was not too bad. He qualified 8th, out-qualified by his teammate, qualified 8th for the main race. Now, in terms of the sprint shootout, he ended up qualifying 13th, so behind his teammate. Now, for the actual sprint itself, drum roll, he finished 10th. Nope, that was Oscar Piastri. Sorry, he finished behind Oscar in 11th. And for the main race, our man, Esteban Ocon, France's own, finished out. DNF. So there we go. Average, I kind of like, no Gasly. Let's give him a high C, maybe. Because he got out-qualified by his teammate, and it was kind of, overshadowed by Gasly. Now, Sergio Perez, he's always an interesting one, isn't he? So, in qualifying, he qualified 9th, albeit only a couple of tenths, within a tenth of Verstappen. Really, really good, solid there. For the sprint shootout, he qualified 7th, albeit we're looking at not quite, but 4 tenths off your teammate. In the sprint, he did make a few places up. He finished 5th. And in the actual race, he ended up finishing 4th in the fastest car when Max had a problem. Yeah, you're getting kind of like a C in between him and Ocon. Once again, better. Oscar Piastri's next. Oh, Oscar. So, Oscar Piastri, he obviously a fantastic Qatar weekend. Absolutely fantastic. And a very average, I think. He very much looked like a rookie. Not out of sorts, but a rookie in his first year of Formula One. He qualified 10th in the main race. And we're looking at the gap. I mean, the gap was, let me think, to about 6 tenths of a second, which is quite big. It's one of the biggest it's been, surely, I think, on a normal weekend between him and his teammate. Now, for the sprint shootout, he did a bit better. He qualified 5th, but he ended up still being, let me see, he was really, really close to Lando. However, for some reason, he completely cooked his tyres in the sprint race. Hit the reverse gear and reversed himself out the points in 10th. And obviously, in relation to the race result, he had a coming together with Carlos Sainz and didn't really finish. So, really, really average weekend for you. I'm going to put you in the high C's. Yes, you did better than Ocon, but not as better than everyone else, I think, in the high C's at the moment. So next up, Daniel Ricciardo, the returning Australian. How did he fare? Well, he didn't fare too well in the race, actually, if I'm honest. But for qualifying, he qualified 15th, albeit Tsunoda qualified 11th. So they both went out of that Q2 session. Now, for the sprint shootout, he did out-qualify his teammate. Tsunoda qualifying 19th and Ricciardo qualifying 11th. That was really, really solid. And for the sprint itself, he lost, I think, a couple of place in the end, finishing 12th with Tsunoda 14th. For the race result, he ended up finishing, I think he had about 15th, last of the runners, but with a really, really bad strategy there. So I'm saying, I think he's kind of equal with Piastri there in a C. kind of what we expected. Didn't set the world alight, but I don't think he was really disappointing. On to George Russell. Was George Russell disappointing though? I hear you ask. Well, George Russell, he for the main race he started. He qualified 5th, which wasn't too bad. Okay, for the sprint shootout, he on track he qualified 8th, but then for the actual sprint grid, because he blocked Charles Leclerc, he ended up starting 11th. But in the sprint, he came back to just about score a point by passing Albon, and in the main race, he ended up. Let me see. George Russell ended up finishing 5th. Not too bad. About 22-ish seconds behind his teammate, nearly 25 seconds behind the main result, and he's getting a C. I mean, it was a very average weekend for George Russell. Yeah, disappointing. So simply because you kind of expected more from him. This was the biggest gap, I think, in terms when you looked at the practice sessions and qualifying in the race that he had with Hamilton for quite a while. Now on to Carlos Sainz. So. Not the rally driver, obviously. His son, Carlos Sainz Jr., he qualified 4th. Okay, out-qualified by Leclerc, but we're talking 10th. Not too bad. Now, in the he qualified again, it was out-qualified by Leclerc, qualifying 6th. And we're looking at, I think nearly 4/10 in the end. Was it? No, 3/10. So not too bad, but out-qualified by Leclerc. And for the actual sprint, he ended up finishing 6th, which was kind of like meh. And for the race result, he was 4th on the track, but finished very much behind his. He beat his teammate because his teammate wasn't a really, really bad strategy, I think. So I'm once again going for kind of like a middling, kind of like I think he did better than George Russell considering. So George Russell's in the seats, isn't he? Sorry. Yeah, so he is in the seats as well. Seats seem to be really, really popular this weekend, aren't they? On to Logan Sargent. Okay, you qualified at the back for the race. Oh, Logan. Now, for the sprint shootout, you again qualified last. Oh, Logan Sargent. For the sprint, you finished last on track after Lance Stroll decided, not to carry on anymore because there were issues with the car. But, and here's the big but, after the disqualification, you got your first points. And bear in mind, you started pretty much last on track. For the actual race, yeah, he finished 10th after DQs on track. And only, we are talking within a second and a bit of your teammate, after everyone has been slagging you off, I'm going to give him an A because he did score his first points. That's the first American driver to score an F1 point. Yes, I mean, Alex Albon, apologies for the phone, Alex Albon did outdo him in the race. But when you think of where Logan Sargent is coming from, and the fact that no one has appreciated him at all, understandably, I get it, I really do. But this race, he ended up scoring a point and finished really, really close to Alex Albon. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And long may it continue. James Vowles has essentially... James Vowles is like, yeah, I really, really like you, Logan Sargent. You are, I really, really want you to do good. And it's quite obvious. He's made it clear he wants Sargent for next year. But Logan Sargent has been doing everything to prove that he shouldn't want him for next year, if that makes any sense. But this race was an exception. It was the exception. Let's make it continue, please. Well done, Logan. Now, Lance Stroll, a funny one. Yeah, so in qualifying, he got out qualified again. But to be fair, he got out qualified by Fernando Alonso by a few tenths. But to be fair, I mean, he started 19th. Alonso started 17th. There was clearly an issue with the car. Absolutely. So onwards to the sprint shootout, and again he didn't do amazing, but he got himself out there, and he qualified 14th, just a 10th behind Fernando Alonso. So for the actual sprint itself, he went out. He was did not finish, but for the actual race, good old Lance Stroll. He's not really old, is he? But he finished 7th on the track, and despite the 2 DQs, he still would have got some points. I think, bear in mind, I think he started from the pit lane, didn't he? He started right at the back. I think he did really, really well. I think, given the current situation, once again, he's certainly getting... I think he deserves a high B, the highest of the Bs. Nearly gave him an A. But Aston, yeah, let's give him... You know what? I'm feeling generous. Let's give him an A. He did really, really well, considering, once again... Yes, he was. I'm so sorry about my phone. He was an absolute silly boy last time out in Qatar. He should have apologised. Really, really rude. And he came here, everyone saying, Lance Stroll, retire, get out of Formula One, play tennis. Was another rumour. Not good enough for F1. He must have suffered a difficult qualifying, a difficult sprint shootout. And goodness me, he must have started this race thinking, oh my gosh. And Aston Martin's upgrade wasn't working, albeit in the race that car was a lot, solid. And yet he still finished to score some points. So I think he definitely gets an A. And I do agree that like Lando Norris being the high A and him slightly one of the lower A's, but still. On to Mr. Tsunoda, on to Yuki Tsunoda. Okay, well, he finished 8th in the actual race, so he scored some points. Really solid stuff there. We're kind of going backwards on this, aren't we? But qualifying was, I think, 11th, so that was probably about as good as the car was going to get. Yes, he was out-qualified and beaten in the sprint shootout. Silliness by starting 19th. And in the actual sprint race, though, he caught Ricciardo, I think, a fair bit. He only finished, about 4 seconds or so, finishing 14th, Ricciardo 12th behind him. So I don't think he did too bad. But once again, I think he's up there. I think he did better than expected, really, by getting those points. He's up there with a high C. Last but not least, Zhou. Yeah, where was he? What happened to Zhou? I don't... Exactly. I mean, I think Alfa Romeo and Haas were kind of like anonymous this weekend, really. They didn't do too bad. He did okay. He qualified 12th. He out-qualified his teammate, Bottas, which was good. Now, in the sprint shootout, Zhou ended up qualifying 15th, again out-qualifying Bottas. Actually, he probably did a lot better than I thought. In relation to the actual sprint race itself, he ended up, let me see, he finished behind his teammate in 17th, his teammate finishing 16th. But the main race, is it going to be a buck? Because I forgot to know he finished again behind Valtteri Bottas. I'm just going to kind of put him here next to Bottas in the C's. So there is your full tier list for the 2023 United States Grand Prix. I'm going to go for a breather. This has been the Hot Lap. We'll speak to you next time. Thank you very much. For anyone that liked, subscribed, if you made it to the end, you are an F1 champion. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you very, very much.